right? The standard we are discussing today is this LKAS 12 income taxes. Before moving to this, first we should have a clear understanding on the difference between these two terms. What do we mean by accounting profit and what do we mean by taxable profit? First, let's discuss on this accounting profit. So accounting profit means what? When preparing our profit and loss statement, we have our revenue figure. I will have just some hypothetical figures here. Assume revenue is 1,000. Cost of sales is 600. And then we will have a gross profit of 400. And we may have expenses of 150. Then profit before tax figure of here 250. Then we have the tax expense, maybe 50. And then we have profit after tax, or we call it net profit of 200. Now, tell me, what is accounting profit? Then mata figure එක කියන්න. කවුරු හරි අහුවොත් මේ P&L එක දීලා ඔයාලගේ company accounting profit එක කීයද? What is the accounting profit of this company? What should be your answer? Now you have several options. What is the accounting profit of this particular company? Is it 1,000? Is it 400? Is it 250? Or is it 200? What can you say? What is the accounting profit? What do you mean by accounting profit? Accounting profit is what? Accounting profit එක define කරන්න ඉතින් කොහොමද කියන්නේ? Accounting profit is the profit, or it can be even a loss, right? Profit or loss okay, someone has given me the answer as profit before tax. Okay, let's see. Right, accounting profit is what? Profit or loss for a period before deducting tax expenses, right? Profit or loss for a period before deducting tax expenses we called as the accounting profit. Simply this means what? Profit or loss for a period before deducting tax expenses. It means what? This is what we called profit before tax. And my hypothetical company ekේ what is the accounting profit? This is the accounting profit, right? The profit before tax figure. This is what we call the accounting profit, right? Accounting profit, profit before tax figure. Then what is taxable profit? This you know. Even yesterday you have done a quiz on this, right? What is taxable profit? Taxable profit is the profit or the loss for a period, right? Profit or loss for a period determined in accordance with the rules established by taxation authorities, right? Taxation authorities කියන rules and regulations වලට comply වෙලා හදලා අපිට එන profit එක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ මොකක් කියලාද? Taxable profit. Isn't it what you do when calculating the tax payable amount? Tax payable amount එක calculate කරද්දී ඔයාලා ඉස්සෙල්ලා මොකද කරන්නේ? In taxation, you need to compute the taxable profit. So to calculate the taxable profit, what you do there? එතනදී ඔයාලා මොකද කරන්නේ? Taxable profit එක හොයන්න. You take initially what? The profit before tax figure. Then some expenses are allowed, some expenses are disallowed. So you are doing the adjustments for that. And finally, you are arriving at what? The taxable profit for the period. Based on that taxable profit, you charge what? You charge the tax expense. Clear? Therefore, if the tax rate is 30%, if the tax rate is 30%, this 30% is applicable based on what profit? Right? If the tax rate given for us is 30%, may 30% apply when accounting profit the taxable profit. Accounting profit 30% filling a taxable profit. If we need to determine the tax expense, what? It is based on the taxable profit, right? Taxable profit. So these are two different things, right? For an example, if we take entertainment expenses, those are allowed. Accounting profit එක හදද්දි නැත්නම් මෙන්න මේ figure එක ගණිතය අපි මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? Expenses යටතේ අපි පෙන්නනවා මොකද්ද? Entertainment expenses කියලා ඒක වියදමක් විදිහට අඳුනගෙන බදු පෙර ලාභය ගන්න කරද්දි අපි ඒක අඩු කරනවා. When calculating the profit before tax, we deduct the entertainment expenses in accounting perspective. But when it comes to tax, what happens? Entertainment expenses are not allowed. Then we are not allowed to deduct. We can't deduct entertainment expenses when we are calculating the taxable profit. Like that way, there are differences. Even depreciation in accounting terms not allowed. In accounting terms, it is allowed. We can deduct the depreciation expense. But what happens when calculating taxable profit? Depreciation is not allowed. What is allowed? Capital allowance. Right? Capital allowance is allowed. And in accounting terms, we are using the accrual basis. Right? Sorry, I keep disconnecting a bit. Right. එතකොට මම මෙතන කතා කර හිටියේ I hope now it is okay. Right? එහෙනම් නැතුම් දැන් හරි නේද? හරි. මම මෙතන කතා කරගෙන හිටියේ මොකද්ද? accounting profit එක කැල් කරද්දී අපි accounting profit එක කැල් කරන විදිහට නෙවෙයි taxable profit එක කැල් කරන්නේ. එතකොට ওই දෙකේ වෙනස්කම් තියෙනවා. ඒ වෙනස්කම් නිසා මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? accounting profit figure එකයි taxable profit එකයි වෙනස්. නමුත් tax කැල් කරද්දී අපි බේස් කරගන්නේ මොකද්ද? taxable profit එක. Right. So I will further explain this using an example. Right? Accounting profit and taxable profit. Accounting profit and taxable profit. Right. Assume in year 1, we have generated a revenue of 2,000. In year 2 again, assume the same amount of revenue we are generating for 5 years. Year 3 වලත් අපේ revenue එක 2000යි. In year 4 also. Right? The same revenue figure we have generated for 5 years. And assume as the expenses we have to bear the depreciation expense only. A hypothetical situation. එතකොට මේ company අපි වියදම් විදිහට as expenses we incur only the depreciation expense. Right? Depreciation expense. Assume we have a machine at cost 1,000. the depreciation rate sorry, I am keep getting disconnected, right? So here depreciation rate, assume it is 20%, right? So if the depreciation rate is 20%, what should be the depreciation expense of each year? එතකොට මේ අවුරුදු පහේ depreciation expense කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? 1000 into 20%, 200, right? 200. Same. එතකොට මේ asset එකට අදාළ depreciation expense අවුරුදු පහේ allocate වෙන්නේ ඔය විදිහට. Year 1, the depreciation expense would be 200, again 200. For the whole 5 years, the depreciation expense would be 200. Assume that is the only kind of expense we are having with this particular company. Therefore, what will be the profit before tax figure? Revenue minus expenses. What is the profit before tax figure here? 2000 minus 200, 1800. For the whole 5 years, we have a profit before tax of 1800. Right. I will take the same situation here as well. For the whole 5 years, the revenue is 2000. The taxable profit එක කතා කරද්දී revenue අපි හිතන්න වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. But in taxation, what happens? Depreciation expense is not allowed. Depreciation අපිට taxable profit. Right? Capital allowance is allowed. Depreciation is not allowed when computing the taxable profit. Assume the capital allowance rate is 25%. අපි accounting තියද්දි depreciation rate එක, right, that is up to the management. Management එක decide කරන්න පුළුවන් machine එකක් තියෙනවා මේක අපි තව අවුරුදු 10ක් පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්ද අපිට මේක තව අවුරුදු 5යිද පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්, that is up to the management. But in tax, when computing taxable profit, what happens? There are predetermined rate, right, given by the taxation authorities. අපිට Inland Revenue Department එක කියනවා මොකද්ද? machine එකක් නම් ඔයාට දෙන්න පුළුවන් rate එක මෙච්චරයි. Furniture and fittings නම් මෙච්චරයි. Building එකක් නම් මෙච්චරයි. Like that way they have predetermined rate. And these rates are changing time to time, right, with government policies and all. The government policies sector, budget sector, මේවා rates වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. But they have a predetermined rate. Company at ඕන විදියට rates දාගන්න බෑ. Right? Like that way, assume the capital allowance rate. Then how it should appear here? එහෙනම් මේ පළවෙනි අවුරුද්දේ capital allowance කියලා අපිට අඩු කරගන්න පුළුවන් කීයක්ද? Out of this 1000, 25%. 1000 කොහෙන්ද ආවේ? machine එකේ cost එක. Right? 25%. 250. In this year 2, again the same amount, 250. Right? Like that way for year 3 and year 4 also we can deduct 250 as capital allowance when computing the taxable profit. Year 5, what will happen? Year 5 වල අපිට capital allowance එකක් අඩු කරගන්න පුළුවන්ද? Right? Nothing. Why? All this 1000 we have charged over this 4-year time period. මේ අවුරුදු 4 ඇතුළත මේකේ සම්පූර්ණ පිරිවැය අපි charge කරලා තියෙනවා. Therefore, nothing we can deduct as capital allowances in year 5. Okay. As a result, what will be our taxable profit figures? In year 1, we will have a taxable profit of 1750. In year 2, year 3, year 4, we will have the right. In year 5, our taxable profit amount will be 2000. Okay. So now you see what? In year 1, the profit before tax figure is 1,800. But in year 1, the taxable profit amount is 1,750. There is what? There is a difference, right? There is a difference. In year 2 again, there is a difference. Year 3, there is a difference. Year 4 again, there is a difference. But, right, if we computed the net impact, see the total revenue over this 5-year period. මේ year පහේම total revenue එක කීයද? It is what? 10,000, right? 10,000 is the total revenue amount, the total revenue figure for these 5-year period. Now to pahema total revenue figure 10,000. What is the total expense? It is 1,000, right? It is 1,000. Then what is the profit before tax figure here? That is 9,000. Profit before tax figure is 9,000. Okay. In taxation perspective, again, the total revenue is 10,000. What is the total expense? Total expense is 1,000. Therefore, what is the total taxable profit amount? 9,000. So what you can see here? What you can see here? There is no difference, right? At the end, there is no difference in accounting profit and taxable profit. So this is what then? This difference, what we can see year by year, is something temporary. මේ අවුරුද්දෙන් අවුරුද්ද අපිට මේ පේන difference එක තාවකාලික වෙනසක් විතරයි. At the end, what will happen? The net impact will be the same. අවුරුදු පහේ net impact එක බලද්දි මොකක්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? Accounting profit එකත් සමානයි. Taxable profit එකත් සමානයි. Therefore, this is only a temporary difference. So how this temporary difference has been arrived? ඇයි මෙහෙම temporary difference එකක් ඇවිත් තියෙන්නේ? Because of what? Why there is a difference here? Why there is a difference here? Because of these two. Because of the difference of the carrying amount and tax base. At the end of year 1, what is the carrying amount? Year 1 එක අවසානයේ අපේ මේ machine එකේ carrying amount එක කීයද? We originally had a machine at a cost of 1,000. In the year 1, we have depreciated 200. Our depreciation expense was 200. Then what is the carrying amount here at the end of year 1? Year 1 වල balance sheet එකට ගිහිල්ලා බැලුවොත් machine එකේ value එක කීයක් පෙන්නනවද? කීයද? It will be 800. Tax base එක කීයද? Right? අපි accounting profit එකම taxation වලට එද්දි කියනවා taxable profit කියලා. Like that way, what we called carrying amount in accounting perspective, we call the same in tax perspective as tax base. Right? එහෙනම් tax base එක කීයද? We had a machine at the cost of 1,000. We have allowed the capital allowance of 250. Then the tax base is what? 750. Because of the difference of this, right, we are experiencing a difference in our accounting profit and taxable profit. So I told you, this is what then? මෙහෙම difference එකක් තියෙනවා තමයි. හැබැයි මේ difference එක මොකද්ද? මේක temporary difference එකක්. At the end, the net impact will be the same. So what do you mean by temporary difference? These terms has been tested in your exams, right? What do you mean by temporary difference? The difference between carrying amount and tax base, right? The difference between carrying amount and tax base we called the temporary difference, right? Now we need to calculate the tax expense. Assume the tax rate is at 30%. Tax rate take a 30%. Right. Tax rate is 30%. Now tell me what should be the tax expense here? What should be the amount we need to deduct here? මෙතන මම අඩු කරන්න ඕන figure එක කීයද? මේ 30% මම apply කරන්න ඕන මොන figure එකටද? With respect of what figure do I need to apply this tax rate of 30%? මේ 30% apply කරන්න ඕන මොන figure එකටද? If we are considering these figures, we are in year 1. Now we need to calculate the tax expense for the period of year 1. And we have given the tax rate is 30%. Based on what we need to calculate this tax expense? මේ 30% apply කරන්න ඕන මොන figure එකටද? මෙයාගෙන් 30%ද? මෙයාගෙන් 30%ද? You know this. What? Profit before tax again 30%ද මම මෙතන tax expense කියලා ගන්නේ? නැත්නම් taxable profit again 30% ද මෙතනට ගන්නවා? What? Taxation, taxable profit, tax payable amounts calculate මොකටද rate එක apply කරේ? It should be based on the taxable profit, right? 1750 is the taxable profit in year 1. For that, we need to apply the tax rate at 30%. So it would be 525. This is not the total tax expense. This is what we call the current tax expense. Current tax කියලා කියන්නේ මේකට. මේ අපේ සම්පූර්ණ මුළු බදු වියදම නෙවෙයි. This is not our total tax expense, right? This is only the current tax expense. 525. 525. So what do you mean by current tax then? එහෙනම් මේ current tax කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Tax that is payable or recoverable. දැන් මේක loss එකක් වුණා නම් taxable profit එකක් නැතුව taxable loss එකක් වුණා නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Tax payable amount එකක් නෙවෙයි අපිට එන්නේ tax recoverable amount එක. So current tax means what? Tax payable or recoverable on what? On taxable profits in the year. I will write it here. Current tax. Current tax means tax payable, or it can be the other way around, recoverable on what? On taxable profits. On taxable profit in the year. වර්ෂයට අදාළ taxable profit එක මත බේස් වෙලා කැල් කරන tax expense එක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ මොකක් කියලාද? Current tax. Here in terms of current tax, sometimes we may need to do adjustments. We may need to adjust for over provision or an under provision. We know we pay tax on what basis? Self assessment basis. එතකොට අපි estimated figure එකක් තමයි ගෙවන්නේ. ඔය estimated figure එක ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ගොඩක් වෙන්නේ නැද්ද? අපේ වර්ෂයට අදාළ බදු වියදමට හරියටම tally වෙන්නේ නැහැ. There can be an under provision or there can be an over provision. That one we need to adjust here, right? I'm not going to explain that because you may have come across this in the taxation. What we do if there is a over provision and what we need to do if there is an under provision. Over provision එකක් තියෙනවා නම් අපි මොකද කරන්න ඕන? ඒ කියන්නේ ගිය අවුරුද්දේ හිතන්න වර්ෂයට අදාළ බදු වියදම අපි දැනගන්නේ මේ අවුරුද්දේනේ. එතකොට මේ අවුරුද්දේ අපිට කියනවා කලින් අවුරුද්දේ බදු වියදම 1000යි. Right? 1000 should be the tax expense of the previous year. But we have provided 1200. අපි 1200ක් provide කරලා තියෙන්නේ over provision එකක්. අදාළ වියදමට වඩා වැඩිපුර provide කරලා. Over provision of 200 is there. So when calculating the current tax, we need to adjust for this over provision. Over provide කරලා තියෙන්නේ ඔය over provision එක අපි මෙන්න මේ current tax එකට adjust කරලා ගන්න ඕන. So my question is, when there is an over provision, what we need to do? Current tax එකට එකතු වෙන්නද ඕන? Current tax එකෙන් අඩු වෙන්නද ඕන? ඔය over provision amount එක. දැන් මෙතන නම් 525 තිබ්බා. This is our current tax expense. If there is a over provision, what we need to do? Over provision එකක් තිබ්බනම් මොකද කරන්න ඕන? We need to deduct it. We need to deduct it from the current tax expense. එහෙනම් අර 200 මොකක් වෙන්න ඕනද මෙතනින් අඩු වෙන්න ඕන. එතකොට වර්ෂයට අදාළ current tax එක කීයද? 325. If there is an under provision, අඩුවෙන් provide කරලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් මොකද කරන්න ඕන? ඒ under provision එක current tax එකට එකතු වෙන්න ඕන. Right? Over provision and under provision. Right. So remember, when current tax is computing based on the taxable profit, and again we need to see whether there is a under provision or an over provision from the previous year. If so, we need to adjust for that. Right. Current tax. Now, in year 2, what should be the current tax expense? Year 2 වල current tax එක කීයද? Again what? This is the taxable profit of year 2 into tax rate 30%. Tax payable on the taxable profits in the year. Then in year 3, taxable profit is this much into tax rate 30%. In year 4, same 1750 is the taxable profit amount. The tax rate is 30%. So this is the current tax expense. Year 5, taxable profit is 2000. Tax rate is 30%. Then the current tax expense is 600. Right? Current tax expense is 600. So what you see here, for the first 4 years, we charge 525 as the current tax expense. But suddenly in year 5, what has happened? We have to charge 600 as the current tax expense. මේ temporary difference එකක් නිසා මේක temporary difference එකක් නේ. අවුරුදු පහේ net impact එක බැලුවොතින් ඔය දෙකේම net impact එක සමානයි. මේ తాවකාලික මේ temporary difference එක නිසා මොකද්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? අපි එකපාර වැඩි current tax expense එකක් දරන්න වෙනවා අපේ අන්තිම අවුරුද්දේ in year 5. So we need to smooth line this, right? In that sense, we may have to calculate something called deferred tax. ඔය deferred tax කියන කතන්දරේ තිබ්බේ නැත්තම් මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? අපි එකපාර, right? At once we may need to recognize a higher tax expense in a particular year because of this temporary difference. To smooth line that, we may need to compute something called deferred tax, right? deferred tax. So what do you mean by deferred tax? Deferred tax, tax that may become payable, or it can be even recoverable in the future. එහෙනම් අනාගතයේදී මේ එකපාර වැටිපුර දරන්න වෙන වියදම මම දැන් ඉඳන් මොකක් කරගන්න ඕනද? දැන් ඉඳන් ක්‍රමානුකූලව අඳුන ගන්න ඕන. right? ඒ අඳුන ගන්න එක තමයි අපි deferred tax කියලා කතා කරන්නේ. Deferred means what? සිංහලෙන් නම් මොකක්ද මේ? Deferred tax විලම්බීත බදු. මොකද්ද? විලම්බීත කියලා කියන්නේ something in future. Right? Okay, so how to calculate this one? Deferred tax expense amount. මේ deferred tax expense එක calculate කරන්නේ කොහොමද? That is what? How can we compute this one? How can we compute the deferred tax expense? Deferred tax is computed by how? Temporary difference into tax rate. I will repeat. Deferred tax is computed by multiplying the tax rate by the temporary difference. Right. So what is the temporary difference here in year 1? Year 1 wala temporary difference එක කීයද? In year 1, what is the temporary difference? Now you know temporary difference means what we have discussed. Temporary difference කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? මේ තියෙන්නේ the difference between the carrying amount and the tax base. Now carrying amount එකේ tax base එකේ වෙනස තමයි අපි temporary difference කියලා කියන්නේ. What is the difference? What is the difference? At the end of year 1, the carrying amount is 800. The tax base is 750. Sorry. So what is the difference? Difference, yes, exactly. The difference is 50. There is a temporary difference of 50. Now we need to determine whether it is a taxable temporary difference or whether it is a deductible temporary difference. අපි දන්නවනේ මෙතන temporary difference එකක් තියෙනවා. I will say TD to denote temporary difference. There is a temporary difference of 50. Now we need to determine whether this temporary difference is a taxable temporary difference or a deductible temporary difference. Right? So I will insert a summary chart of it. Can you see this one? Right? Temporary difference means what? The difference between the carrying amount and tax base. Right? The difference between carrying amount and tax base we identified as the temporary difference. This temporary difference can be a taxable temporary difference or it can be a deductible temporary difference. How to determine that? If our carrying amount is greater than the tax base, then we say there is a taxable temporary difference. අපේ carrying amount එක tax base එකට වඩා වැඩි නම් අපි කියනවා එතන තියෙන්නේ මොකක්ද? Taxable temporary difference එකක්. So these taxable temporary differences will lead for deferred tax liability. It will create a deferred tax liability. If our carrying amount is less than the tax base, අපේ carrying amount එකයි tax base එකයි compare කරද්දී carrying amount එක අඩුයි නම් අපේ tax base එකට වඩා, then we say there is a deductible temporary difference. So these deductible temporary differences will lead to deferred tax asset, right? So by looking at this summary, now tell me whether this temporary difference of 50 is a taxable temporary difference or whether it is a deductible temporary difference. නම් මේ temporary difference කියලා ආපු 50 එයා taxable temporary difference එකක්ද එහෙම නැත්නම් deductible temporary difference එකක්ද? What it is? Temporary difference means the difference between the carrying amount and tax base. And we found it is 50 in year 1. Now we need to determine whether it is taxable or whether it is deductible. But yes, correct. It is taxable temporary difference. Why? Here the carrying amount is 800, tax base is 750. So carrying amount is greater than the tax base. Therefore, this is a taxable temporary difference. Taxable temporary difference. Right? You all are correct. Okay. For the moment, I will have it here. Taxable temporary difference. So what should be the deferred tax amount? Again, if there is a taxable temporary difference, it will be resulted in what? It will be resulted in a deferred tax liability. It means this will generate or we may need to have a deferred tax liability account as a result of this. Now tell me, at the end of year 1, what is the deferred tax expense we need to recognize, we need to identify? Deferred tax formula එකට දැම්මොතින් කොහමද? Temporary difference into tax rate. Temporary difference is 50. Tax rate is given at 30%. Therefore, what should be the deferred tax expense? මේක taxable වෙච්ච නිසා තමයි මේක expense එකක් වෙන්නේ. නැත්තම් මොකක්ද මේක? This is recoverable. 50 into 30%. It is 15. So how can we account for this 15? What we have done here? මේ year 1 වල අපි මොකද්ද කරේ මේ 15 වලට? P&L debit කරා. ඒකනේ මේ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. We debited our P&L account. We have identified an expense called deferred tax. With respect to that, what is the other entry we need to pass? P&L debit, where to credit? P&L එක debit කරලා තියෙන්නේ. මෙයාව credit කරන්න ඕන කොහාටද? We need to credit it under deferred tax liability account. 50, right? P&L in year 1. එතකොට year 1 වල balance sheet එක දිහා අපි බැලුවොතින් මොකක් පෙන්නනවද? මොකක් පෙන්නනවද? We may have an amount worth of 15 under our liabilities. අපේ liabilities වල, right? Deferred tax liability කියලා 15ක් පෙන්නනවා at the end of year 1. Right. So now here in year 2, first what we need to do? Before determining the deferred tax, we need to determine what? What is the temporary difference? How to determine that? It is the difference between these two, carrying amount and tax base. When it comes to year 2, what is the carrying amount? Year 2 වල balance sheet එක ගත්තොතින් ඔය machine එකේ carrying amount කියලා කීයක් පෙන්නනවද? We have depreciated this machine for 2 years. It means 400 is the accumulated depreciation amount. It means the carrying amount will be 600, right? Carrying amount is 600. Then what is the tax base? දෙවැනි අවුරුද්දේ අන්තිම carrying amount එක 600යි. එහෙනම් tax base එක කීයද? අවුරුදු දෙකක් අපි capital allowance කරා. ඒ කියන්නේ 500ක් අපි capital allow කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Remaining amount is what? 500, right? Remaining amount is 500. Hope it is clear. Now, what is the temporary difference? And temporary difference එක කීයද? Temporary difference is 100. The difference between these two. Is it a taxable temporary difference or is it a deductible temporary difference? Taxable the deductible. Carrying amount is greater than the tax base. Therefore, it is a taxable temporary difference. Right? It is a taxable temporary difference. Now, taxable temporary difference into tax rate. It means 100 into 30%. Kiyada? 30. This 30 means what? That is the deferred tax liability amount that should be at the end of year 2. Temporary difference එක tax rate එකෙන් වැඩි කරාට පස්සේ අපිට එනවා 30ක්. ඔය 30 කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද අපේ? year 2 එක අවසානයේ අපේ deferred tax liability account එකේ balance එක වෙන්න ඕන කීයක්ද? provision වල කතන්දරයම තමයි. Right? 100 into 30%, 30. So now already we have a balance worth of 15. දැනටමත් deferred tax liability කියන account එකේ අපේ balance එක කීයක් තියෙනවද? 15ක් තියෙනවා. දෙවැනි අවුරුද්දේ අවසානයේ ඔක කීයක් කරගන්න ඕනද? What is the requirement? We need to make it as 30. Why? Temporary difference into tax rate is 30. So we need to make this as 30 at the end of year 2 to make the balance as 30 in our deferred tax liability. What is the entry we need to pass? Deferred tax liability account එකේ දැනට කීයක් පෙන්නනවද? 15ක balance එකක් පෙන්නනවා. දෙවැනි අවුරුද්ද අවසාන වෙද්දී ඕක 30ක් කරගන්න ඕන. ඕක 30ක් වෙන්න ඕන. 30ක් කරන්න නම් මම මොකද්ද පාස් කරන්න ඕන entry? මෙයා තව කීයක් ක්‍රෙඩිට් කරන්න ඕනද? Deferred tax liability account need to be credited by further 15. Right? තව 15ක් මෙයාට ක්‍රෙඩිට් කරන්න ඕන. Where to debit? මේ 15 debit වෙන්නේ කොහාටද? Debit it as deferred tax expense. Right? P&L එකයි debit වෙන්නේ as deferred tax. This goes to the P&L of year 2, the corresponding entry. Clear? Right? Okay. In year 3 then, year 3 වලට වෙද්දි carrying amount එක කීයද? This becomes 400, tax base becomes 250. Therefore, there is a difference of 150. Carrying amount is greater than the tax base. Therefore, this is a taxable temporary difference. Right? Taxable temporary difference. This taxable temporary difference into tax rate 150 into 30% means 45. It means at the end of year 3 in our balance sheet there should be a balance of 45 as our deferred tax liability. Year 3 එක අවසානයේ deferred tax liability කියන account එකේ අපේ balance එක කීයක් පෙන්වන්න ඕනද? 45ක් පෙන්වන්න ඕන. දැනට කීයක් පෙන්නනවද? දැනටමත් 30ක් පෙන්නනවා. එහෙනම් මෙයා 45ක් කරගන්න මොකද කරන්න ඕන? In year 3 again we need to charge 15 to the P&L. In year 3 as what? As deferred tax. As deferred tax. Year 4, carrying amount will be 200. Tax base is what now? Year 4 අවසාන tax base එක කීයද? It is 0. Therefore, there is a temporary difference of 200. Carrying amount is greater than tax base. Therefore, there is a taxable temporary difference. This temporary difference into tax rate, කීයක් එනවද? 200 into 30%. It is 60. Means what? At the end of year 4, there should be a balance of 60 in our deferred tax liability account. So far, how much we have? 45. So we need to make this as 60 at the end of year 4. For that, what we need to do? We need to credit another 15 to our deferred tax liability account. The corresponding entry will appear in our P&L, right, as deferred tax. Deferred tax. Okay. Now, year 5, our last financial year. Now, what is the carrying amount? At the end of year 5, what is the carrying amount? Year 5 වල balance sheet එක අරන් බැලුවට පස්සේ ඔය machine එකේ carrying amount එක කීයක් පෙන්නන මැද්ද? It is fully depreciated. Therefore, no carrying amount. 0. Tax base? 0. Therefore, what is the temporary difference? Temporary difference එක කීයද? 0. Right? The temporary difference is also 0. Now, what we need to do? Temporary difference into tax rate. 0 into 30%. කීයද? 0. It means what? At the end of year 5, right? The balance of deferred tax liability account should be 0. At the end of year 5, the balance of our deferred tax liability account should be 0. To make the balance of this deferred tax liability account 0, what we need to do? Now, year 5 ඉවර වෙද්දි deferred tax liability 0 කියලා කියන්නේ deferred tax liability කියලා account එකක් අපේ balance sheet එකේ තවදුරටත් පෙන්වන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. year 4 එක ඉවර වෙද්දි කීයක් තිබ්බද? 60ක් තිබ්බා. එහෙනම් මොකද්ද මේ 60ට කරන්න ඕන? This 60 we need to reverse. How can we do that? කොහටද reverse කරන්නේ? P&L, right? Year 5. How much? 60. එතකොට මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? මෙතනත් 60. මෙතනත් 60. It means at the end of year 5, we will not have any balance under deferred tax liability account. Right here, we have debited the P&L. Sorry, we have debited our deferred tax liability account. Where to credit? We have to credit it under deferred tax. Credit කරද්දි that debit කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ අපි වියදමක් විදිහට අඳුන ගන්නවනේ. ඒකයි මෙතන ඍණ ආවේ. වියදමක්. Depreciation is an expense. That is why I put the negative mark here. Expense. Current tax is an expense, right? But here what has happened? This should be credited. Credited na මොකද වෙන්න ඕන? It should be the other way around, right? 60. Current tax and deferred tax over this 5-year period will appear like this. Now see, what is the total tax expense? Total tax expense means the sum of these two. කොට වර්ෂයට අදාළ මුළු බදු වියදම කියලා කියන්නේ current tax සහ deferred tax දෙකේම එකතුව. එහෙනම් in year 1, what is the total tax expense? In year 1, what is the total tax expense? කීයද? Current tax සහ deferred tax දෙකේම එකතුව. The total tax expense is then what? 540, right? 510 නෙවෙයි. ඔය ධන ඍණ මාරු කරගන්න එපා. Current tax කියලා කියන්නේ වියදමක්. Debit නේ කරේ. මෙයා ඩෙබිට් වුණා අපි කෑෂ් වලින් ගෙවුවොත් ඉන් කෑෂ් ක්‍රෙඩිට් ගෙව්වේ නැත්තම් මොකද්ද current tax liability credit deferred tax වල again P&L debit this is an expense we have credited deferred tax liability account we have credited this is also an expense therefore total tax expense is 540 in year 2 again 540 in year 3 540 year 4 540 years sorry right? From year 1 to year 5, the total tax expense would be 540. බලන්න. Deferred tax නැති වුණා නම් මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? අපි එකපාර වැඩි amount එකක් වඳුර ගන්නවා year 5 වල. By introducing this deferred tax as per the requirement of LKAS 12, what we have managed, right? We have managed to smoothline our tax expense, right? So this is how it will be in LKAS 12. This is what we need to do as per LKAS 12. We need to determine what is our current tax expense. When determine that, we need to consider whether there is a over provision or under provision. Then we need to determine the deferred tax. For that, we need to know the temporary difference, right? Okay, therefore, profit after tax figure should be what? In year 1, this is the profit before tax figure. This is the tax expense. Therefore, profit after tax is 1,260 over this 5-year period. Clear? So this is what basically happens or what is required in terms of LKS 12. Okay, LKS 12 will require one take. Okay. Right. So I will upload this document to your Google Classroom. You can again have a look on this. Right. And it is very important to understand these terms with the understanding. Accounting profit, taxable profit, what is temporary difference, right? The understanding is very important, right? With that, I will do, so I have uploaded this document to your Google Classroom, and there are a few questions. In fact, there are 3 questions in this document, right? See the first one. Distinguish between the following terms: deferred tax asset and deferred tax liability. Deferred tax asset, Google Classroom link. Give me a second. Right, so I have put the Google Classroom link. For those who are not joined there, they can join. Okay, question number 1, part 1. Right, these are exam type questions. Exam වලත් මෙන්න මේ type එකේ questions තමයි ඔයාලා බැලුවොතින් අහලා තියෙන්නේ. See, we need to differentiate between the terms deferred tax asset and deferred tax liability. Right, deferred tax asset, deferred tax liability. So what do we mean by deferred tax asset? Deferred tax asset කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Deferred tax asset, maybe deferred tax assets. Deferred tax asset is generated because of what? Because of deductible temporary differences. So how can we define that? Deferred tax asset define කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් කොහොමද? Amount of income taxes recoverable in future in respect of deductible temporary differences. I'll repeat it again. Amount of income taxes recoverable in future in respect of deductible temporary differences. Those are deferred tax asset. The deferred tax liability means what? Amounts of income taxes payable in future in respect of taxable temporary differences. Okay? Amount of income taxes payable in future in respect of taxable temporary differences. That is deferred tax liability. So all these definitions, right, I have given, right, even in this note, and I have uploaded the PowerPoint presentation which is prepared by one of the group as an assignment last time. So there also you can find these definitions. Okay, B, current tax and tax expense. Current tax, then current tax අපි ගත්තේ මෙහෙමයි. Taxable profit එක තමයි tax rate එකෙන් වැඩි කරලා current tax එක ගත්තේ. එහෙනම් ඕක කොහොමද වචන වලට දාගන්නේ? What is current tax? Tax payable or recoverable on taxable profits in the year. Tax that is payable or recoverable on taxable profit in the year. Right? That is current tax. Tax expense. Tax expense එක ගත්තේ කොහොමද? Current tax එකයි deferred tax එකයි එකතු කරාට පස්සේ තමයි අපි මොකක් කිව්වේද? Tax expense කියලා කිව්වේ. So how can we define that? Tax expense means what? Total of current tax and deferred tax for the accounting period. වර්ෂයට දාලා current tax එකයි deferred tax එකයි එකතු තමයි tax expense කියලා කියන්නේ. Right? So if you have the understanding, it is very easy to define these terms. You need not to read by heart. And there is a sum in part 2. Let's try that. Read it out first. Wi-Fi PLC has recorded accounting profit of 2.5 million for the year ended 31st March 2015. The used machinery at the cost of 600,000, which was purchased on 1st April 2014, and the firm depreciate machinery at the rate of 25%. වර්ෂයේ accounting profit එක දෙනවා. machine එකක් ගත්තලු වර්ෂයේ මුල පිරිවැය දෙනවා. ඒකේ depreciation rate එක දෙනවා. Inland Revenue Department allows capital allowance at the rate of 33.33%. එහෙනම් මේ යන්ත්‍රයට අදාළ capital allowance rate එක 33.33% or 1/3. If applicable tax rate is 28%, we require to calculate the following for the year ended 31st March 2015. What is the current tax expense? What is the deferred tax expense? And what is the total tax expense? Right. So do this with me. First, we will map the given information. We are in the year of 2014-15. Right. So question number 1, part 2. First of April 2014 to 31st March 2015. This is the financial year we are dealing with. For this financial year, we have an accounting profit of 2.5 million rupees. And they have given us a detail about the machinery, which the cost is 600,000, depreciation rate 25%, capital allowance rate is 33.33%. cost is 600,000. Cost is 600,000. Depreciation rate is given as 25%. Capital allowance rate, I will say 1/3. 33.33% කිව්වත් එකයි 1/3 කිව්වත් එකයි. Right. So what we need to do, we need to calculate current tax, deferred tax, and tax expense. And further, they have given the tax rate. Tax rate is 28%. This is all what they have given. So based on this information, we need to compute first one, the current tax, right? The current tax expense. How to compute this? කොහොමද current tax calculate කරන්නේ? Okay, I am getting some answers. 686,000 current tax, deferred tax 14,000, tax expense 700,000. We'll see. Okay. So how to calculate current tax? Current tax means what? Tax payable or recoverable on taxable profit. කොහොමද ගත්තේ මෙයාව? Taxable profit, right? Taxable profit වැඩි කරන්න ඕන මොකෙන්ද? Tax rate එකෙන්. But we have given the accounting profit, right? We have given with the accounting profit. Accounting profit නැත්නම් මෙයාට කියන්න පුළුවන් අනිත් නම මොකද්ද? Profit before tax. Accounting profit is given 2.5 million. Now we need to convert this accounting profit into what? Into taxable profit. We need to convert this accounting profit into taxable profit. So how can we do this one? This is actually what you do in taxation. කොහොමද කරන්නේ? Right? Depreciation in tax purpose, depreciation is not allowed. Depreciation එක අපිට taxable profit එක කැල් කරද්දී අඩු කරන්න දෙන වියදමක් නෙවෙයි. හැබැයි accounting profit එක කැල් කරද්දී මොකද කරලා තියෙන්නේ? Depreciation expense එක අඩු කරලා තමයි මෙයා ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් අපි මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ ඉස්සෙල්ලා? We need to add back the depreciation expense. Right? We need to add back the depreciation expense. What is the depreciation expense? Depreciation expense එක කීයද? 600,000 into depreciation rate is what? 25%. It means what is our depreciation charge? 240,000. Right? 100 and sorry, not 240. 150,000. This is the depreciation expense. So depreciation is not allowed. Therefore, what we need to do? We need to add back this 150,000 here. We need to add because it is not allowed. What is allowed? What is allowed is the capital allowance amount, right? Capital allowance is allowed. So what is the capital allowance amount? Capital allowance rate is given as 33.33% or 1/3. It means what? 200,000 is the capital allowance. That is allowed means what? That is the amount we can deduct. That is the amount we can deduct. Therefore, what is the taxable profit? Accounting profit taking accounting depreciation එකතු කරලා capital allowance අඩු කරාට පස්සේ එන figure එක. කීයක් එනවද මෙතන නම්? 2 point, yeah, 45 million. Is it 2.45 million? Okay, yes. Now we know the taxable profit we have computed by a separate working, that is 2,450,000 taxable profit into tax rate. Tax rate is given as 28%. 28%. Therefore, what should be the current tax expense? 2.45 million into 28%, 686,000. 686,000. This is the current tax expense. Taxable profit into tax rate. Taxable profit we have not directly given. We have given only the accounting profit. Therefore, we should know how to convert this accounting profit into taxable profit. So here what we have done, we have add back the depreciation expense as it is not allowed in tax purpose, and only the capital allowance is allowed. Therefore, we deduct the capital allowance amount. The taxable profit into tax rate will give us the current tax figure, right? The current tax expense amount. Second, we need to find the deferred tax expense. How to find this? As we are in year one, no issue, we can multiply the temporary difference by the tax rate. Temporary difference into tax rate, right? Temporary difference into tax rate. So how to find the temporary difference? Temporary difference. What do you mean by temporary difference? It is the difference between the what? Difference between what? Difference between the carrying amount and tax base. We called temporary difference. Here we have a machine. At the end of year one, what is the carrying amount? As at this date, what is the carrying amount of this machine? My machine ke carrying amount එක කීයද? Cost was 600,000. We have used this asset for 1 year. It means what is the depreciation expense? 150,000. 600,000 minus 150,000. 450,000. That is the carrying amount. Machine ke, as at this date, the carrying amount is 450,000. Like that way, what is the tax base? Tax base එක කීයද? As at this date, what is the tax base? Cost is 600,000. For this 1 year, we have allowed a capital allowance worth of 200,000. Therefore, 600,000 minus this 200,000, tax base is 400,000. Tax base is 400,000. Yes, 400,000. So there is a temporary difference of how much? There is a temporary difference of 50,000. 50,000 temporary difference is there. Then what we need to determine? Whether this temporary difference is taxable or deductible. Whether it is a taxable temporary difference or whether it is a deductible temporary difference. What can you say? May taxable temporary difference එකක්ද? Deductible temporary difference එකක්ද? What can you say? How to determine that? We need to compare the carrying amount and tax base. Here what has happened? Carrying amount is greater than tax base. Carrying amount is greater than tax base. If carrying amount is greater than tax base, then we say what? This temporary difference is a taxable temporary difference. Taxable temporary difference. Right? Taxable temporary difference. So it means we need to identify an expense with respect to this temporary difference as deferred tax. Taxable temporary difference එකක් එනවා කියලා කියන්නේ අපි ඔය asset එකට අදාළව deferred tax expense එකක් අඳුන ගන්නවා. Right. So here the temporary difference was 50,000. Tax rate is 28%. It means what should be the deferred tax expense amount? 50,000 into 28%, 14,000. 14,000 deferred tax. Right. And in last part, we asked to calculate the tax expense. Tax expense for the period. So what should be the tax expense? How to calculate that? Tax expense means what? Tax expense means the total of current tax and deferred tax. ඔය දෙක එකතුවනේ අපි tax expense කියලා කියන්නේ. එතකොට current tax අපි කැල්කුලලා අපිට ආව කීයක්ද? 6,86,000. Deferred tax 14,000. Therefore total tax expense is what? Total tax expense is what? 700,000. This is the total tax expense. Right? If you understand these terms well, then it is easy. It will be easier for your calculations as well. Current tax කියලා කියන්නේ මේ, deferred tax කියලා කියන්නේ මේ වගේ දෙයක්. Tax expense with understanding, you know. Right? So that is the calculation part in question number 1. Clear? Right? If you go through your past papers, similar nature questions are there. මේ type එකෙන් questions තමයි තියෙන්නේ. Are you clear with this? Have you got the same answers? Yes, 686. Okay. Question number 2. Can you manage this one? Or should I help? Question number 2, question number 3, anyway, you can do it at your home. Question number 2. Right. So I will do question number 2 and we'll stop. Huh? Question number 2 කතා කරලා මම මේක නවත්තන්න. Question number 3, you can try it at your home and also the past paper questions. Okay. See what are the informations they have given in terms of question number 2. QQ PLC has commenced operations on 1st of April 2016 and recorded accounting profit of 3 million for the year ended 31st March 2016 on their first year of operation. The firm has used following depreciable assets to generate this profit during the year. Right? They have machineries and they have furniture and fittings. The cost figures are given. The firm depreciated machinery at 20% and furniture and fittings at 10%. Accounting depreciation rates are given 20% and 10%. Inland Revenue Department allows to obtain capital allowance at 33.33% for machinery and 20% for furniture and fittings. Capital allowance rates. If applicable tax rate is 28%, we need to calculate again what is the current tax, what is the deferred tax, and what is the tax expense. Right. Question number 2. Accounting profit is 3 million. Accounting profit කිව්වත් එකයි, profit before tax කිව්වත් එකයි. 3 million. And they have given details about machines and furniture and fittings. So they have given us the cost, depreciation rate, and the capital allowance rate. 900,000, 200,000. Machinery 20%, furniture and fittings 10%. 20%, 10%. Capital allowance rate for machinery, it is 1/3. Furniture 20%. 33.33%, 20%. And further they say the applicable tax rate is 28%. So these are the informations they have given. First, we need to calculate the current tax expense. How to calculate? Taxable profit into tax rate. Taxable profit into tax rate. Taxable profit. Taxable profit is not given straightforward for us. But we have given what? The profit before tax figure, or the accounting profit is given. Accounting profit is given. Can't see. Accounting profit is given. Accounting profit is 3 million. This accounting profit we need to convert into taxable profit. මේ accounting profit එක taxable profit එකක් විදියට convert කරන්න ඕන. කොහොමද කරන්නේ? When computing the taxable profit, what we know? Depreciation is not allowed. Allowed is what? Capital allowance is allowed. Right? Depreciation. Depreciation is not allowed. Capital allowance is allowed. Accounting depreciation is not allowed. Therefore, we need to add back. In terms of machinery, what is the accounting depreciation? Machine wala accounting depreciation එක කීයද? 900,000 into 20%, right? 900,000 into 20%. Here, 180,000. 180,000 is the depreciation, accounting depreciation of machineries. What about furniture and fittings? Furniture and fittings, cost is 200,000. Depreciation, accounting depreciation rate is 10%. Therefore, 200,000 into 10%, what is the accounting depreciation? 20,000, right? 20,000. Accounting depreciation is not allowed. Therefore, we need to add back these figures to our accounting profit. What is allowed? Capital allowance is allowed. Therefore, we can deduct the capital allowance with respect to these two assets, machines and furniture and fittings. So what is the capital allowance of machine? Machinery වලට අදාළ capital allowance එක කීයද? Cost is 900,000. Capital allowance rate is 33.33%. It means 1/3. 1/3 of this is how much? 300,000. 300,000. This is what is allowed. This is what we can deduct, not this figure. In terms of furniture, cost is 200,000. Capital allowance rate is 20%. It means 200,000 into 20%. How much? 40,000. 40,000 is the amount that we need to deduct in calculating the taxable profit. Therefore, what should be our taxable profit figure? Taxable profit එක කීයක් වෙන්න ඕන? 3 million rupees plus this 180,000 and 20,000, and from that we need to deduct 300,000 and another 40,000. 2,860,000. 2,860,000. හරි නේද? If I am wrong, let me know. Taxable profit is 2,860,000. So this is what we need to consider when computing the current tax, right? Therefore, taxable profit is 2,860,000. The tax rate is given as 28%. Therefore, the current tax expense is how much? Is this the answer? Yes, okay, correct. Okay. This should be our current tax expense amount, right? Taxable profit into tax rate. Again, taxable profit is not given as straightforward. We have given the accounting profit, and now we know how to convert this accounting profit into taxable profit. Right. So this is the answer for part 1. And in part 2, we need to find what? Deferred tax. We need to find the deferred tax amount. How to find? Temporary difference into tax rate. Temporary difference into tax rate. Right. Okay. Temporary difference means what? The difference between the carrying amount and tax base. Right. the difference between carrying amount and tax base. We called the temporary difference. We have, in this case, we have two assets, right? We have machineries and we have furniture. These are the two assets we have. So of each assets, we should know what is the carrying amount, what is the tax base, and therefore what is the temporary difference. First, we will take machineries. At the end of the first year, what is the carrying amount of machines? Machine wala carrying amount එක කීයද? Cost was 900,000. We have depreciated. What was our depreciation expense with respect to machineries? 180,000, right? From this working, we can directly take that. 900,000 minus 180,000. What is the carrying amount? 900 minus 180. It is 720,000. This is the carrying amount of machines. Then what is the tax base? Tax base එක කීයද? 900,000 minus the capital allowance. 900,000 minus 300,000. Tax base is then what? 600,000. Tax base is 600,000. So what about the temporary difference here? There is the difference of 120,000. Is it a taxable temporary difference or deductible temporary difference? May in a temporary difference එක taxable deductible. What? By comparing these two figures, which has the greater value? Carrying amount is greater than tax base. This is greater than tax base. Therefore, this is a taxable temporary difference. It means we may have to incur an expense in the current year in terms of machineries, right? Yes, taxable temporary difference. Likewise, in furniture, what is the carrying amount? Cost is 200,000. When calculating carrying amount, we need to consider the accounting depreciation. So 200,000 minus 20,000, it is 180,000. Carrying amount of furniture. What about the tax base? 200,000. When it is tax base, we need to consider the capital allowance, right? 200,000 minus 40,000. It is 160,000. 160,000. Right? 160,000. So here what is the temporary difference? There is a temporary difference of 20,000. Is it taxable or deductible? Carrying amount is again greater than the tax base. Carrying amount is greater than the tax base. Means what? Again, this is a taxable temporary difference. Therefore, what is the total taxable temporary difference? Total temporary difference is 140,000. Right? Total temporary difference is 140,000. As both of these are taxable temporary difference, this is also taxable temporary difference. Right? Taxable temporary difference. Right. So we have found the temporary difference, that is here 140,000 temporary difference. We got a taxable temporary difference worth of 140,000. This we need to multiply by the tax rate. The given tax rate is 28%. It means we will have a deferred tax payable amount worth of 39,200. 39,200. deferred tax expense, right? And as the last part, we asked to calculate the total tax expense. Total tax expense. Total tax expense means what? The sum of current tax and the deferred tax. Total tax expense. Current tax we have computed, it is 800,800. Deferred tax 39,200. Therefore, what is the total? The total 840,000. The total tax expense amount. The total tax expense amount. Yes, correct. Okay. So if you know how to do these calculations, and if you know how to define these terms, what do we mean by current tax? What is accounting profit? What is taxable profit? What is deferred tax? What is taxable temporary difference? What is deferred tax liability? If you know these terms, and if you know how to compute these current tax, deferred tax, and tax expense, right? Most of the time, easily you can gain 8 to 12 marks in your exams. Right? Okay. So I will upload these answers as well as that Excel sheet to your Google Classroom. Okay. So is it clear? Do you need to clarify anything? Sorry, at the last moment, again, I got disconnected. Okay, shall we stop from here? Okay. So we will wind up the session, and on our next session, we will discuss on LKAS 28, that is investment in associates, right?